It's time to introduce our next speaker for the day. Our next speaker comes from an organization which has been one of the most successful startup stories of recent times. Mr. Dale Vaz is the head of engineering and data sciences at Swiggy. His key responsibility is to drive the company's technology strategy and lead the engineering and AI teams in building Swiggy's next generation platform. Prior to this, Mr. Dale has spent over 11 years at Amazon.com. In his last stint there, he built and led engineering and AI teams for Amazon India, launching new products and platforms for Amazon in consumer business, Amazon Payments, Amazon Now, and Junglee.com. As someone who thrives in high-performing engineering organizations, Dale is passionate about delivering innovation through technologies including machine learning, big data systems, highly scalable, low-latency distributed systems, and mobile technology. Apart from technology, Mr. Vaz is also focused on transforming Swiggy into an AI-first, agile organization that can innovate and at 10x scale. Dale holds a master's degree in business administration from the University of Massachusetts and a bachelor's degree in computer science from Manipal Institute of Technology. Today, Mr. Vaz will be speaking on the topic AI at Swiggy, delivering smiles through AI-driven innovation. So let's put our hands together to welcome Mr. Vaz on stage.
Hi, everyone. Good morning. Thanks for having me here. I'm super excited to be here at this conference. And I have a few familiar faces in the room from people who have been at SP, JMR, and then also some of my ex-colleagues back in Swiggy who have told me great things about the campus. So I'm super excited to actually even visit the campus. I used to be in Mumbai before growing up as a child. My wife actually was also in Mumbai and also visited the campus during one of her college festivals. So she's also excited for me to be here, so we're all excited. So thank you for having me. Today I'm going to give you a quick overview about Swiggy. The intent of this is to take Swiggy as a use case of how AI can change a business. So it's not to deep dive into any specific area. There are a bunch of things we are doing, but we will not be able to get into details. Think of this as a primer into how you can apply AI to a business problem and kind of working through a customer journey. How do you transform a customer experience using AI across? So it will be a little bit fast because I do not have time to go into. I've been told there's a strong timekeeper who's going to signal me out the moment I go over time. So Swiggy, right? I think people know of us as a food tech company or a food delivery company. And this show of hands here, how many of you have ordered at least once from Swiggy? Oh, wow, OK. I wasn't expecting this in OK, this is good, thanks. I think I'm in the right room then. Awesome. But I think we are beyond food, and this is what was interesting for me when I kind of started talking to Swiggy when I wanted to join them. The vision of Swiggy is to go beyond food, to think about how do we deliver convenience to a customer. In today's world, we deliver convenience as food, where if you want food, you can get it delivered to your home in 30 minutes or less. But in the future, our vision is to go beyond food and talk about products and services that consumers want in their daily need. So if you want, for example, medicines, or if you want, for example, a light bulb, or if you want a diaper for your kid, anything Swiggy should be able to provide to you and deliver to you in unparalleled convenience. And that's kind of the vision of what we are setting out to do here in India. We've begun that. Obviously, the Swiggy app is one, which we've launched, and it's been live now for 5 years. We've also moved on. This last year, we launched something called Swiggy Daily, which is a subscription service where, as a consumer, if you're looking for home-style food, you can get subscriptions of food delivered to your home, your door, your desk within a simple package. We launched something called Swiggy Stores, where essentially any store in your city is now accessible to you. This is live in Gurgaon, Bangalore, and maybe even Hyderabad. And now, as a consumer, you can pick up something from Apollo Pharmacy and deliver it to you. We've got consumers who've picked up Fire TV sticks and got them delivered to their rooms before the launch of the Game of Thrones season, just in time for the episode to go live. We've got consumers who've picked up pan when they feel like having a pan at night after dinner. So Swiggy Stores brings that kind of unparalleled convenience to you as a consumer. And then finally, we just launched a few weeks ago something called Swiggy Go, which is essentially allowing you to pick up any product from anyone you want. So let's say you want to just have a cake picked up from some place, or if you want to drop your laundry off at a certain place, or if you just forgot your keys at home and you want the keys to be picked up, Swiggy Go is that kind of next level of unparalleled convenience where anything you want, you can have somebody go do it for you. Right? So in terms of numbers and terms of business impact from this, I obviously cannot share a lot of details because we are still a small startup. But just a few data points which are publicly available. From a scale perspective, we are now in 300 plus cities across India. We have around 200,000 drivers on the fleet. There's an interesting stat that our drivers, we just talked about the Chandrayaan-2 and the interesting moon landing attempt. Our drivers on a daily basis make more than 10 trips between Earth to moon in terms of distance. Just in terms of the number of kilometers traveled on a daily basis. So that's kind of the number of miles or kilometers that our drivers are putting in. We also have around 1.3 lakh restaurants on the platform. And as we go into stores, we'll have a lot more of those stores on board. All this is being done at an average of 32 minutes, which means our average order time across the millions of orders that we deliver across all these different cities is 32 minutes. So it's interesting numbers, but as the great man once said, with great growth comes great complexity, right? And that's something that I think we all have seen. So the question then is, why? And obviously for me, coming out of Amazon, I'd seen scale, and I was also curious, saying, we've done this before. E-commerce has done pretty massive scale, even bigger numbers than these. So what's unique about Swiggy that's really so complex? And at the heart of it, the difference between an e-commerce system and what Swiggy is trying to do is basically an e-commerce system is a two-way marketplace. You've got a supplier who has static inventory and a customer who wants to basically buy it, and then you've got to match them together, right? And then you've got trucks, which are your trucks that go and pick up at certain set times. In the case of Swiggy, you've actually got a three-way marketplace where you've got not just consumers, you've got not just suppliers, but you've also got drivers who are basically temporary gig workers, and they are also moving in time. So they are logging in, logging out. They're not necessarily always showing up for work. They may come, they may not come, and they also have different times of the days when they are trying to work. So in some sense, you're trying to match all these moving parts, demand and supply, across all these three different entities in real time. And that's the key part of the conversation of why AI is so important to Swiggy. If you summarize this, and I put in a lot of big words there, so I'll kind of take some time there. It's a real-time micro-optimization of dynamic constraints. Real-time because in every single moment, things are changing. The network is moving. The driver was near the restaurant. Now the driver decided to move 5 kilometers away. I can't use that driver. I have to find somebody else. The restaurant was free and could prepare food. The next moment, 20 people walked in. The restaurant is busy. They can't really process my order in any time. So in real time, these constraints are changing, unlike an e-commerce world where you've got inventory sitting in a warehouse, which is kind of reserved for you, and you have a truck that can leave at a certain time. So you've got to figure that out. You've also got to do micro-optimizations. Again, I'll use the e-commerce parallel. There you've got one-day delivery or two-day delivery. So I have time where I can actually make decisions to optimize my fleet, optimize my logistics. In the case of Swiggy, you basically got 32 minutes. So if I give a customer a 30-minute promise, I have very little time by which I can actually optimize the network. I have to go down to the minute level. And literally what we obsess about at Swiggy is about the minute level deviations between the promise we give and the actual time that the driver shows up to deliver your food or your package. And finally, this is done at scale where we're doing this millions of times every single day. So from an order volume perspective, without giving you any specifics, it's a ton of orders. Right? And so for every single order, you've got to be able to process in real time for that customer, for that particular restaurant, for that particular driver. How do I match them and make sure that they are delivering the best possible promise at the most optimal cost that we can generate from a supply chain perspective? And that's kind of the problem statement that got me excited about Swiggy and why we've been working so hard over the last few years on this problem. I'll take a moment to talk about the customer journey, as I said. And some of you may have, hopefully if this thing works, some of you may have seen this ad that we had run. Yeah.
He's looking for a single. And he sneaks one in there.
Even the smallest food orders delivered. Swiggy, water delivery.
Okay, cool. So we just saw this customer experience journey. There's a Mr. Sharma who wanted to get a treat and was able to find that treat and get it delivered to him. without his wife knowing. What I wanted to spend time today is talking to you about this journey, right? And there are two pieces to this journey. The first is, how do you help somebody discover the right thing they want at the right time? It's a great segue leading off from the presentation we had just now on the recommendation systems. So we learned about recommendation systems and the complexity of building it. It's essentially that. But there's some more unique challenges, and this comes from the fact that we are having a hyper-local constraint. So if you remember, we talked about the real-time-ness of this business. So in a typical recommendation systems, as you saw previously, the models that were proposed was there's the content-based filtering and then collaborative-based filtering, and then you combine them together. So content-based filtering basically means, do I understand my content? Do I understand the movie? Do I understand the food? Do I understand what the customer intent, the profile, and so on? And then collaborative filtering is essentially, do I understand what that person has done in the past, what similar customers have done in the past? So can I combine them together? So you like Indian food, you like Indian food, you've purchased from that restaurant, so can I also purchase from that restaurant? That's what typically would happen. But that's actually simple. That's not what happens at Swiggy though, because you then have to layer on to the fact that you now have real-time changing variables in the equation. And there are many real-time variable changes, right? One is, for example, the driver fleet itself. The number of restaurants I can show you depends upon the drivers I have at that moment. I can't tell you order from XYZ and then turn around and say, sorry, just kidding, the driver isn't available. So I have to also have a sense of how much driver capacity I have in real time. I have to also understand the restaurant state. Can the restaurant even take any more orders in real time? Can I even assign an order to that restaurant, or are they already maxed out on things that they're processing with their current load on the restaurant? So we're also trying to understand restaurant states. There's also an interesting time and spatial context here. If you think about it as a customer, when you go to the Swiggy app in the morning, you're intuitively wanting to have a breakfast item. There's a certain spatial and time context that because it's morning, you want to see breakfast recommendations. The same customer comes to the app in the afternoon, wants lunch recommendations. They don't tell Swiggy. There's no pop-up saying, are you looking for lunch or are you looking for dinner? We know, because there is a time context to when you're visiting the app. Similarly, there is also this notion of space context, where when you are at home or when you are in office, you may have a different preference. For example, in office, a customer may be looking for something that is easy to consume, like a food bowl or something which is light. But the same customer goes back home on a weekend, maybe looking to consume something that is a lot more experiential. Maybe I'm looking for something more indulgent at that point because I have the time and I want to be able to have a good meal with my family. So there is a notion of space context. So all these constraints basically kind of make this entire recommendation system of how do you generate recommendations a lot more involved, a lot more interesting than a normal standard recommendation model. And the way we're going about solving it at Swiggy is we're building some of these pillars of what we call intelligence layers, and then bringing them together through an AI-driven model. So each of these layers are basically intelligence systems in their own right. And then you've got this Uber layer above it that pulls them together and kind of generates that list of restaurants to the consumer. Very quickly, I think we'll just go through some of the layers we have. The first one is catalog intelligence. Essentially, when you think about Swiggy, the unique thing about Swiggy, unlike e-commerce, is there's nothing like an item. If you look at an e-commerce world, if you're buying a phone is a phone is a phone. An iPhone X is an iPhone X, no matter who's selling it to you. Because you know you'll always get the same product. It's a canonical version of that product. In the case of Swiggy, a biryani sold by XYZ is different from a biryani sold by ABC. Because the style of preparation, the way they prepare it, the spice level, the cooking style, the number of oil they put is all different. So you can't just say, hey, you like biryani, here's biryani, order. Because you may end up not really liking that biryani. So what we really need to do is to get to understand the metadata behind the food. We need to understand what exactly goes into that biryani so I can then understand that this biryani has a lot more spice. And you as a consumer have eaten a lot of these spicy food. Hence, you like spicy biryanis. Or maybe there's a certain flavor in that biryani. Maybe there's a certain cooking style, which is maybe the way it's baked versus where it's put in oil. And that could be an indicator of your intent. So getting to understand the food is basically the first step in this journey. And we are building something we call the food graph. The food graph, simply put, is like a social graph for food, a social network for food. It's the Facebook for food, where all the food items come together and get related by the relationships they share. The intent is that can we understand what goes into every single menu item, And can we go into the information it contains and then link them together? So if I have a paneer dish and if I have a methi dish, is there a relationship between them because they both contain the same ingredient, methi? And can I then build that relationship as a network between these two entities? So that then allows me to build a kind of understanding about my catalog. That's one level of intelligent systems we're building where, for example, we are building systems here that help us identify the kind of cuisine an item belongs to. So we have built an AI model that automatically looks at a certain product and is able to identify this is a certain type of cuisine, which then allows us to say, if these are similar cuisine items, then they all share a common relation, so then they are all linked in this food graph that we have built. And that's an example. There are a bunch of this, but again, I cannot go into details. The next kind of example that we have in that layer of intelligence is the customer intelligence, and there was a little bit of that reference here. Here again, at Swiggy, we're trying to figure out how do we get better at understanding our customers by inferring facts about them. There's one where you can ask a customer a certain survey, which is, I think, a simpler way, but then a lot more intrusive to the customer experience. The way we are approaching it is, can I infer facts from your behavior on the platform, from the things you've done on the platform? One interesting model that we did was discount affinity. So there's a lot of talk about coupons and how customers like coupons and discounts on the food platform. We built a model to identify what affinity does the customer have to a coupon. What we realized is there are certain customers who actually don't really care about coupons. They care about service. They care about speed. Now, using that discount affinity score, we were able to then run targeted marketing campaigns to say that if you don't really care about a coupon, I don't need to give you a coupon, which means I can focus more on the other aspects of the experience, like the promise and the on-time delivery, and save money for the business by not giving you a coupon when you never needed one. And so by running this simple discount affinity score, we were able to save like 14% of our marketing costs on that specific campaign by targeting the right customers with that right coupon when they needed it. Similarly, there are around 130 different attributes that we've identified that we want to basically infer. And there are a bunch of different things. These go into the aspirational states of consumers. We're trying to understand not that this person is a woman or this person is a 24-year individual. We're trying to understand what are their aspirational states, which means what intent does the customer have when they come to the app? Are they looking for premium quality? Are they looking for guaranteed on-time delivery? Is this customer actually looking for more selection, maybe unique curated selection? So what are the intents that they're bringing when they come to the app? And given that intent, can I then figure out what best to do with them and change their journey on the experience? The third pillar that we are building is what we call location intelligence. So as we talked about it, there's that spatial context to a customer. So now understanding their location is super important, but understanding also the information that is embedded in the location. So when a customer gives us a location, for example, if I say I'm in XYZ Lat Long, now is that particular point part of a larger point of interest? Is that point in a certain tech park? Can I associate that to be a part of the tech park? So now I know that this is a tech park and hence this becomes for me a demand center that I can then go after. Or is this point that the customer is saying, is it part of a residential apartment complex? And is this all part of that same group that we have? So how do we take the customer address information? How do we, one, clean it up using address quality improvements? And then how do we map that to points of interest? And that's what we are building. We're building what we call the points of interest, where we are able to uniquely identify from the location data these kind of hotspots that basically correspond to customer demand centers. They could be tech parks, they could be offices, there could be buildings, apartment complexes, and so on. And using that, we can then be able to provide customers a lot better notion about what demand exists and what supply exists in that area. The fourth piece, as we said, was now on the driver side. The driver side, essentially, when you bring up the phone and you open up your Swiggy app, the first thing we are looking at is saying, okay, for that particular customer, who are the drivers available in their area? And there are two problems in this space. One is you've got to be able to predict how many drivers do you even need. That's the first thing. How many drivers do I go and get so that on Sunday morning at 9 a.m. when the customer shows up, I have the right number of drivers available in that zone. And you've got to do this at a zone level, which means you have to do this for Andheri separate from Mulund, separate from Vashi. So at every single zone level, you have to be able to predict the amount of drivers you need in ahead of time. And that's some of the ML models we've built where we are doing multi-level prediction. We do a 15-minute out prediction of demand where we can then do certain spikes and get people in a hurry. Or we can do a 1 day out or a 1 week out. But now once you have the prediction in place, the next thing is when I actually show up. So I predicted 50 drivers, but let's say the customer shows up in real time. Now in real time, I need to be able to understand of those 50 people whom I predicted, how many are actually available for the next order to come in. Which means now you've got to worry about not just what the drivers are doing, but which drivers will be free in the next few minutes so that I can use them to assign for the next order. So we have a real-time capacity estimation model that we do, which basically computes the time to free. So across these 200,000 drivers that we have, at any point in time, our systems are able to tell us that we have X amount of free capacity available at a certain zone across these 300 cities. So when you as a customer come in, we make sure that when you see the restaurants, we know at a very high level of accuracy that we can guarantee delivery to that customer in the time we give you. And that's because we are building models to predict the driver's availability in real time for a zone, for a certain location. And then the fifth one, which is now you've got the restaurant themselves. So we talked about the customer, we've talked about the catalog, we've talked about the location and the driver. And then the fifth input that goes into this recommendation system is the restaurants themselves. And if you look at the restaurants themselves are like these dots, green and red. Green means they're available, red means they are unavailable. And they're changing in real time. Because a green restaurant is somebody that's opened up right now, they're available for business. Suddenly they go under stress. They go red, which means I can't take any more orders. I need to now go down. I need to gracefully degrade myself from the experience. I'm not taking orders when I cannot fulfill them. So you have that kind of a challenge. You also have a challenge of the restaurant being physically too far away from the customer. We don't want to give a customer a promise saying, I'll give you food in 2 hours, because it takes me 2 hours to reach. By the time, obviously, we're not very happy. So we also need to understand the physical distance and the time taken to reach the restaurant. Now, even that, obviously, changes in real time. Because the time takes me to drive from Andheri to Mulund maybe at 9 a.m. in the morning is different from the time it takes me to drive at 9 p.m. in the night, right? And so the notion of availability of restaurants also is variable basis the time of the day and the stress factors. And this is also changing like these dots on the map. So every moment you bring up the Swiggy app, we're also recomputing in real time which restaurants are actually serviceable for that single customer position, that customer lat long. And how do we then decide which subset do I provide to the customer. The interesting use case here is rains. With whole different slides that maybe I can have another session just on rains and how rain brings this immense amount of variability into your network. Because in rains, everything goes for a toss. Everything we've talked about here just kind of falls off the plate when you talk about rain. Because people behave irrationally during rains for some reason. Some of us run out in the road to run in the rain. Some of us kind of go and hide under the buildings. So then we have drivers who stop driving. Some drivers just drive and they don't bother about the rains. We have customers who flood into a restaurant because it's raining outside and they have nothing else to do. And so the restaurant goes under stress. So different things happen. Lots of craziness happens. So rain is a conversation maybe for a long dinner or some other coffee catch-up. So now you have all these 5 pillars that we've talked about, where each of these are themselves AI-driven models that we've built. But then when as a customer, when you want to build this recommendation, you've got to bring them all together, right? And that's the piece that we now have over these underlying platforms. We've built a relevance-based model that essentially brings all of this up and provides to the customer a list of restaurants in real time. So in real time, we are evaluating not just what's the network, what is the customer, what is the catalog, but we're also scoring all of these to figure out within the possible set of 200, 700 restaurants, what should be the rank order that we should give to our customers. And that's how, as a customer, as Mr. Sharma, when Mr. Sharma opens up his app in the evening, he will see Gulab Jamun restaurants right on top of that list, because that's exactly what's happening in the background trying to work to get him that list. And that's the first part of the customer experience journey, and how do we get Mr. Sharma to even discover the right place. Now, the next piece, now that you've got the order placed, he's placed the Gulab Jamun order, now he's waiting for it, right? And the question is, how do you deliver it to the customer in the time they need? And if you think about hyperlocal delivery, it's actually a combination of multiple legs happening in parallel. And I'll take a moment here. There are two pieces. The leg above is the restaurant, and the leg below is the driver. So when the order comes in, we fire a notification to the restaurant saying, hey, get ready cooking your dish. So the restaurant has something to do where they have to do prep. They have to prepare the item, which is the food preparation time. And they get started right away. And then we have the driver. Now, as we talked about it, the drivers are moving in real time. So when I finally want to pick a driver, the driver has to go from the location they are at to the restaurant, which is called the first mile, and then pick up the food at the restaurant, which is called the wait time. So they show up, the food isn't ready, they're waiting at the restaurant. Once the food is ready, they have to go from the restaurant to the customer location, which is now the last mile. So if you think about this, this is this orchestration of multiple micro activities happening to be able to deliver that food. Restaurants are moving, the drivers are moving around, and then they're waiting, and then eventually they all combine to get that food into your hands. And so that is the entire simple challenge of coming up with hyperlocal logistics. If you think about it, there are different things that can go wrong in the space. Obviously, variability, we talked about rains and how traffic and weather can affect this. Also, local events, you can have a procession on the street and suddenly your predictions have gone for a toss. You have location accuracy itself. A lot of this information depends upon knowing where the drivers are in real times. Sometimes the drivers turn off their devices because it consumes battery life and they want to save battery life. Sometimes the accuracy of GPS itself is not good enough for us that we cannot be able to use it. We also have driver behavior. Some drivers are a little casual. They'll go off and they'll have a chat with their friends while they were supposed to deliver something, and then you'll see the driver is stuck on your phone and not moving on the phone. Or sometimes it's unintentional. They won't realize that this is important, and so there's a lot of human element to this entire equation that we have to figure out. You've got restaurants' behavior, but the restaurant is also trying to figure out, I've got customers I need to serve who are walking into my in my restaurant on a daily basis. Who do I serve them first? Do I serve the online customer first? How do I balance this kind of competing needs for demand in real time? We've also got restaurants who have an equation with the drivers where either they believe the driver will show up, so they start preparing ahead of time. Sometimes they believe they won't show up, so they wait for the driver to physically show up. So now you've got to figure out all these kind of inputs. So essentially, this is like the real world right here, right? This is like getting work done from a large blue-collar workforce. And so then the challenge here is how do you use a lot of AI to drive this? So it's kind of how do you use algorithms to drive the workforce? And that's exactly what we're doing at Swiggy, where we are looking at this as saying, can I build algorithms to understand and predict some of this variability, and then use that to then drive maybe better behavior, better optimization of my logistics? So a few examples of things we have done. One is the travel time. So if you go back to that diagram we had, the first thing is the driver has to travel. There is the first mile, and then there is the last mile. So now we've built time series-based models that, basis the data we have, we can predict to the accuracy of around 5 minutes on a scale of around 35 minutes delivery time, the actual time it will take for a driver to go from point A to point B. And over the millions of data points that we have, we've gathered, for example, we collect location data every 20 seconds from the driver's phone. So we can actually trace the footsteps that a driver takes from the point A to point B and use that information to be able to say, over time, can I build a statistically meaningful prediction over the time it will take for them to go from point A to point B. And we can do that also at different cuts. We can do that at, for example, the time of day. So I can say, on Sunday, 9 a.m., it will take you 35 minutes to go from point A to point B. On Sunday, 9 p.m., it will take you 37 minutes to go from point A to point B, and build those kind of interesting predictions. We've also seen that we've got the combination of human intelligence that can augment our AI. So we have a lot of people on the fleet. We have physical fleet managers who are in all of these different cities and zones who are also helping the driver. So they provide us feedback back into the system. For example, weather. When rain hits a certain zone, there's a fleet manager in Andheri who will go and flag rain on a certain console. That will give us a signal that in Andheri at this point there is rain happening. And using that, we can then know that there's a variability, so we can map that variability to the event happening in rain. There are also things like, for example, driver tenure. We had this interesting data analysis that revealed that the moment the driver does at least one delivery to a certain customer geolocation, their travel time reduces by 3 minutes, which means just the physical knowledge of the space gives that driver an edge of 3 minutes over another driver in the same network. And that's a powerful metric for us because, again, we are optimizing to the minute level. So if I can shave off 3 minutes from a 32-minute order, I can get it down to 29 minutes. That's huge for our business, right? So all these insights are what we are using to basically build this into the model. So one of the things that our model does is we look at driver tenure when deciding also the travel time and the actual distance the actual time they may take to deliver the product order. You've also got geolocation boundaries. We talked about the address and the location and GPS being inaccurate. One of the recent experiments we are running is we are installing beacons, which are essentially low-frequency Bluetooth devices that are going to be sitting in these restaurants that will allow us to track when the driver comes within that range. If I look at a GPS, on the phone GPS, you've got around a 200-meter accuracy. So if I'm in a mall, if I show up at the garage, it will tell me that you are at the restaurant because it's within the range. But actually, it takes the driver another 5 minutes to get up from the mall garage all the way to the restaurant. So we lose 5 minutes in that accuracy there. Instead, we are looking at saying, can I use a low-frequency beacon that is installed at the kitchen, which only has a 50-meter range. So now the driver has to physically be closer to the restaurant desk before they can confirm that they have arrived. And this gives us a much tighter notion of driver location and helps us build a much tighter location of the signals. On the restaurant side, as we talked about that other leg, which is now the food preparation itself, as you can imagine, food preparation is an important part of the job. If I send the driver too early, they are waiting at the restaurant and they are losing time. If I send them too late, the food is waiting and the customer is mad. So you've got to figure out what is the preparation time so I can send the driver at the right time, right? And so now we also have built models to be able to predict the preparation time of dishes by dish type. It's not down to the individual dish level. We aren't able to say one naan ka itna lagega or one roti ka itna lagega. Not that sophisticated yet. But if you think of this as a collection of family, like a breads, Indian breads, we're able to say for a restaurant X, Indian breads take them X amount of time on an average. And that's basis, again, an ML-based model. So the first thing we do there is we have to classify menu items into cuisine. So we have to be able to understand that Rumali roti is of type Indian bread. So there is a classification model that we use to classify items to cuisine types or families. And second, given a family, can I then build over time a notion of for a certain type of Indian breads, how much time does it take? And here again, we do a lot of information into building this data. So there's a lot of data we collect, but there's also information that we have built, and it's a kind of, again, a man-machine solution. We've also provided the restaurants on their app, which we give them, a way to mark the food as ready, which means we said it will take you 20 minutes. The restaurant gives us a physical confirmation at 21 minutes. We know we were 1 minute off. So the marked food ready is a physical human input to the system to give a feedback loop back to our model to make it smarter. So as restaurants are correcting us with the actual data, we're able to then get better at our predictions. Now, you've got the time you've got predictions done, you've got food preparation predictions done, right? Simple. It should be all easy. Let's assign a driver and let's go. But then you have the next order problem here. Now you may have 25 drivers who are available in a certain zone. And the customer has placed an order. Mr. Sharma has placed an order at a certain restaurant. So the restaurant is fixed, but the drivers are many. Whom do you choose from that list? And here's where you now have to take the ML models and build on top of that an OR-based assignment optimization problem. Any here students of OR, operations research? Awesome. So some of you will know what this is. Basically, you've got to optimize a certain set of drivers and order assignment. I have 25 orders that I need to fulfill in a given time. I have 50 drivers who are available to fulfill. Each of these drivers have a different cost function. Some of them are further away, some of them are closer away, some of them have a greater on-time delivery rate, some of them have a greater customer experience score, and so on. So there are different considerations that go into this model. There are around 42 different variables that we use in the assignment algorithm, which basically then says for every single pair of driver and order and customer combination, whom should I pick? And this balances out these three equations. There is, can I ensure that the driver I select has the least possible wait time. So I want to optimize for the driver's efficiency. I don't want the driver to be spending time waiting. Can I ensure that the customer promise is met, which means if a customer who said 40 minutes, I don't want to assign a driver who will not hit that time, so I also have to constrain there. And of course, there is the cost of it. So if I have 5 drivers, can I get that driver who can make sure they deliver all these constraints within the best possible cost to my business? So this assignment algorithm is basically using all these predictions for every single driver and restaurant combination. It is using all these predictions to then say which is the best driver to assign for that customer's order. And in any 30-second period, for example, at peak, we evaluate 4 million of these combinations. So our systems are running, and there are the number of combinations, as I said, 200,000 drivers, 130,000 different restaurants. You can imagine the tuple, number of drivers time restaurants, and then you've got to evaluate over the combination of possible drivers and restaurants, which of them is the best possible one to select for that specific order. So you're doing this in real time for every single order coming in, and we're processing this at a pretty interesting scale. So all this tech, all this interesting tech comes together to make a happy customer, right? That's kind of what we are all about. But then if you think about where we are at right now, we aren't done, because there's still the next 100 million customers. There's still the customer we haven't yet solved for. We still need to make sure that this customer is also now a part of Swiggy. And so then the challenges we have ahead is a quick primer into what we are doing in the next few months and years ahead. From a customer experience perspective, we also want to think about, if you're looking at solving for the next 100 million customers, how do you use AI to think about those customers who may access the product in a different way? We had a great talk about accessibility. That's obviously one big aspect of saying, how do you help a customer who is not necessarily the standard regular customer today, who looks and feels like an English-speaking customer, who is internet savvy, who has access to online credit. That's kind of the base we have. How do we go to a customer who speaks a different language, who does not speak English, who speaks maybe Hindi, a customer who's not comfortable typing, who's maybe more comfortable speaking and talking about this, a customer who has specific accessibility needs, and how do we help them be able to use the platform and get convenience delivered to them? So a lot of our focus in the next few months and years ahead will be on the customer experience, from understanding, investing in voice, vision, natural language, and of course machine translation, or the use cases vernacular. So a lot of the effort there in that space. On the logistics side, there are a few interesting spaces we are going to think about. Today you've got the last mile, which is how do I reach the restaurant, or how do I reach the apartment gate. But then once you reach the gate, to get to the customer location is what we call the last mile. And that's where your typical mapping solutions break down. If I look at Google, Google will not tell you how to get to your doorstep. Google will tell you how to get to the apartment complex. But then where do I go to park? Which is the entrance for guests versus which is the entrance for apartment residents? How do I know from that guest entrance, how do I go to tower A, and which is the best possible route to travel? That's where, again, we lose a lot of time. We lose around 5 to 6 minutes in what we call the last mile. And so there, again, we're going to invest in location intelligence to be able to understand, can I build the equivalent of maps for that particular path to give my drivers better guidance. And then similarly, when you go beyond bikes, today we are a bike-led or bike-first business. If you think about our greater vision about doing convenience, we should be able to also deliver a refrigerator to a customer if they want to in the future. Or we should be able to deliver 50 textbooks to SP Jain if you guys want to for a certain class, right? So then now you need to go into multimodal forms of transportation. Can I drive a bike? Can I drive a car? Can I drive a taxi or even a van? There's also multi-leg, which means I don't want to always assume that I only have a single driver do a point-to-point. I want to also be able to say, can I optimize my network so that one driver takes something, comes to a certain place, drops it off, and then you have a feeder system of multiple drivers doing the second leg. So breaking this down into a multi-leg mode. And then finally, multi-order optimization, which is batching. Can I deliver not just one, can I deliver multiple orders in the same round? So a lot of this is essentially going to take the complexity of what we have and then maybe multiply it exponentially by a few more orders. So we are kind of focusing on that for the next few years. And then on the restaurant side, we're actually investing a lot in rethinking how restaurants and kitchens operate. It's one area where tech hasn't really been involved in a big way. We are rethinking this by calling this a smart kitchen. How do we bring technology into restaurants so that we can help optimize their business efficiency? Things like getting smart devices into the restaurants, like investments in IoT-enabled ovens. For example, one of the things we see in our kitchen is that if a temperature of a fridge goes above 4 degrees Celsius, then food goes bad, and you literally have to throw all the meat or the food in that kitchen, in that fridge, right? So it's a big cost to the restaurant. So using a simple thing as an IoT-enabled fridge, you can actually track when the temperature of that fridge has gone above the limit and flag an alert. But the interesting bit is how do you combine IoT signals with AI to be able to not just sense but also do predictive sensing. So for example, can I future forecast that this is going to be something happening in the future, and hence can I take proactive action? Not react when the temperature has gone above 4 degrees, but actually start to say the temperature seems to be increasing. I believe it will go beyond 4 degrees, so you better intercept that ahead of time. So that's kind of where we're focusing our time on. There's also computer vision. One interesting experiment we're running right now is when the food leaves the kitchen, you want to make sure that the food that the customer ordered is what they get. Today in our kitchens, we have a human who sits there and who actually looks at the dish. So they say, okay, the customer ordered paneer lababdar. This looks like paneer lababdar, good. And they do the manual QA, right? And every once in a while, a customer will find like a chicken dish arriving when they ordered a veg. So we're investing right now, and we're building this prototype. I don't have a video, but we've got it live in one of our kitchens where we've built a computer vision-driven small rig. It's like a shoebox, like this, where you can place your dish right in the bottom of the box. It's got a camera on top of it, which takes a picture of the dish. And in real time, using a deep learning model, it classifies the dish into a certain type. So it will know that this dish is paneer lababdar, and this dish is chicken lababdar. And so it will tell through an audible alert that this is something that the customer ordered or not ordered. And that's something that we are piloting out right now. It's a partnership also with NVIDIA that we are working on some of these models. So a bunch of interesting things there that we can work on in the kitchen space. And then, finally, as we think about the future with the vision of what Swiggy is trying to build, we're also getting to a space where we'll actually be within 10 minutes of every single customer in India. And when we have that kind of access to customers, the extent of what we can do in terms of the new convenience we can drive and the amount of business ideas we can build is probably unlimited. So it's just very early days, just getting started. And hopefully, as somebody had said previously, stay tuned for more innovation from AI. With that, I'll stop.
First of all, we apologize for the interruptions during the presentation, sir. And thank you for providing us a deeper insight into how Swiggy works as a platform and as well as an organization. We now open the forum for Q&A.
Mr. Vas, thank you for the presentation. I'll be right there with the question. The first question is regarding, so you are leveraging AI and ML over here. On your platform, so as you are optimizing the consumer experience using technology, how does the tail end of your restaurants fare amidst this game? Because I hope, should I elaborate more on the question? Or?
Yeah, when you say fair, what do you mean by fair? How do they fare? In what context?
So for example, you'll want to optimize the consumer experience by pushing a lot of what they already are consuming on Swiggy.
No, not necessarily true. The way you approach recommendation systems is you have a notion of exploit and explore. Exploit is basically saying that you exploit their past behavior. So what was discussed was really around saying, how do I exploit? Collaborative filtering is essentially a way of saying you've ordered more from something. Can I show you more of that? So you ordered more biryani. Can I show you 5 more biryani joints that you can order from? That's kind of exploit model. The explore model is where you then start to intersperse into that same list new things that you don't really, haven't really used. Right? So when you go back to the food graph and some of the intelligence we are building, if there is a restaurant that has just opened up, that maybe it's a new small restaurant, but the restaurant, let's say it serves Greek cuisine, right? Totally unique Greek cuisine. So nobody knows about it, so it's a kind of a small restaurant. But let's say you as a customer are a fan of Italian cuisine. Because of the relationship that cuisines share, you can intersperse a Greek cuisine into the list as an explore strategy and start trying to give customers these access to hidden gems that we would call that would then become popular. So over time, if they get clicks, then they become part of the exploit strategy. But initially, you start to just kind of pump them back into that. So the ways in which you do this is to mix a little bit of both what customers like as well as what you think they may like and help these restaurants too.
Dale, couple of questions. What is the hardware stack? Are you using cloud-based or is it all internal, which you are doing? Second, the way I understood, you are focused on minimizing the time. But when you're going to new business models, let's say you want to deliver fridge, maybe the time when I order and I receive is not so important as the time I will be available to receive that. So for example, I will be ordering in the morning, but I'm fine with the fridge coming late when I'm out back from home. Is that a factor which will change the whole way you have architected, or will it just be a small change in one of the layers, which will be the time layer?
Got it, cool. The first one is easy, I'll give that immediately. It's an AWS completely hosted cloud-based stack. We don't have any hardware on-premise. The second one is also actually easier. We have already launched a scheduled delivery option on Swiggy. The challenge is the CX is so broken that people don't realize we have that feature. But on the app, you can even now go and schedule your food to come at a certain time in the future. And some of you may have used it. I don't know if anybody here has used scheduled delivery. Oh, cool, awesome. So it's not that bad. But we do see very few orders. But the fact is that today we allow that to happen. From a platform perspective, it doesn't really change, because what it does is essentially the promise time that we have given the customer just happens to now be 3 hours out versus 32 minutes. So when you look at the optimization algorithm, it has a lot more time to assign the order. It just waits. So that order just sits in the queue until its clock starts to tick. And as it becomes closer to the delivery time, that's when it just bubbles up automatically. So moving from scheduled to on-demand or on-demand to scheduled is not necessarily a big change to the platform.
Hi, Del. So my question is, when we talk about Swiggy, the ratings and the review system is does not have a lot of precision when I compare with other websites. So does Swiggy think of going into a more community-based platform, like where we have text reviews from customers? It will also give an edge to the company to understand more from a perspective of a customer.
Absolutely. I think that's a significant, I would say, product gap in how we are. We've been largely transactional platform where you would say from a upper funnel perspective, customers come to Zomato, maybe even Google, to figure out what they want. And then they come to Swiggy to basically be able to transact and make that transaction. We are attempting at building products that will allow us to get more content from community. And so we have some interesting ideas coming out. Text-based, interestingly, we may not do a lot of it. I think we believe the customer base is moving away from text into more audio-visual ways of consuming content. So we have got some other interesting ideas on how we bring content to customers to help them in the discovery, but maybe not through long, lengthy reviews, but something else. But you're right, absolutely spot on.
Thank you. That was a wonderful presentation. Just one question. I mean, you have successfully convinced us that Swiggy's hyper-local delivery and the optimizations are probably the most complex.
Thank you.
So the question I have is, there are very many AI models at play because there are so many different dimensions. Now, how do you know the combination of models are working for you? And when is it the right time to, work on something and tweak something?
It's a great question and something I think we always discuss. I think the solution that we've come up with is we don't end up using one single model. We use what we call an ensemble approach, where you can run multiple models and they can all contribute up into the net score. So when you have an ensemble approach, you can actually have some models that are focused on, in the case of time predictions, as an example, we have time predictions where we use something like ARIMA, which is a statistical forecasting or regression model. And then we also have deep learning, which is used for some of our more denser models. So deep learning works when you have a lot more data. So you can't use deep learning models for every single time prediction, because if you don't have enough data, you won't get enough accuracy. But for some that have a lot of data, where you have a lot of orders coming to a certain restaurant, that size is big enough that you can use a deep learning model. So basically there we use both these models running on the same data set, and they both are generating predictions. We measure the accuracy of the prediction, and then we pick the one that is best. So by using this ensemble approach, you can actually come to a world where maybe you have 5 models running under the hood, and you're picking the one in the real time for the best possible way. That's one. A simpler one, which also was working for us for a long time, was basically scientist intuition. The scientists, after doing a lot of data analysis, eventually build intuition around what is a better one. So they will actually have rules-based model usage. They would say, for these zones, I will use this kind of model. or for this kind of restaurant, I will use this kind of model. So if it's a fast-moving item, I have a fast-moving model. So this particular item always gets this model. So you can also have intuition-based approach of trying to choose the best possible model. But it's a constant investment of time. It's something we are always working on. Even as of Friday before leaving for this, I was spending 2 hours with the team saying, how do you go from an accuracy of X to accuracy of X minus Y? Because it's got to keep getting better. So we are also, for example, working with AWS to see how can we use some of their more advanced technologies like reinforcement learning to see if we, or multi-arm bandit and some of those technologies where we can say, can we get better at this? Can we increase the algorithm efficiency itself? So it is a never-ending game.
Very impressive, Dale. Two questions. Are you using embeddings, number one? And second is, which are the role models globally where food tech has become profitable and on an operational basis through the use of AI, if you know of any?
The first one, yes, we are using embeddings. We use embedding. In fact, embeddings we found it gives us a better boost than using weighted functions. So embeddings in a lot of this, in the example of time predictions where we predict the prep time, food preparation time, what we found is an embedding that identifies the type of food actually gives us a better result. So if I know this is a food of type bread or of type rice, then that gives us a much better accuracy. So we use embeddings a lot. The second question, I don't know of any business that is profitable yet. I know Uber is public, but their numbers are yeah, so Uber Eats, for example, Uber Eats, they claim to have a good margin, but it's not profitable. The biggest, by the way, the biggest food tech company in the world is Chinese. The company is called Meituan. They do around 300 million orders per month, which outstrips even e-commerce in India. So if you combine Amazon, IN, Flipkart, and all of these, Myntra, everybody combined, the number of orders per month is less than the orders that Meituan does on their platform. They are in 3,000 cities, so a massive scale, but still not profitable. I think at this point, most companies are focused on growth. So they are looking to say, how can we acquire customers to the platform? So a lot of focus is on saying, can I subsidize the cost so that I can bring on more consumers and then at some point turn around and monetize on that base. I don't know if any one company has achieved unit economic positive.
Yeah, this is regarding, first of all, a great service. And Swiggy, I'm quite a fan. So, yeah, and one of the things I noticed is I think there is a little effort on optimizing the last mile delivery in terms of if you order from a restaurant, another 1 minute order the same dish or maybe similar dish again, 2 people land up at probably use the same time. So it's great customer service. I'm very happy. But in terms of cost or even the route optimization of delivery when a person pick up something on the way. So this entire part of delivery optimization, whether in terms of batching orders or in terms of routing optimization. Is there some work you're doing or?
Yes, there was a brief bullet point. I skipped over it in the context of time, but we do batching. We actually have batching enabled for 19% of our orders. Batching is done only for orders that are ordered within a certain time frame from the same restaurant to the same customer zone. So if there are 2 customers in this, say in this college who have ordered from XYZ restaurant within a certain time frame, we will batch. Now what happens though is, because the time frame is such, every time we run the thing, we also predict for each order what will be the probability of us being able to hit the promise. And sometimes, given the estimates that we may believe that it's better not to batch to protect the customer promise than to batch and risk that the order will be late. Because when you batch, the order has to wait for the second item being ready. So the first item may be ready, but the second item is not, and then now the customer who's waiting for the first item is getting anxious. So in some cases, we make deterministic calls saying let's not batch, but we do have batching algorithms. We run batching as a separate algorithm over the assignment, and today, as I said, 19% of our orders are being batched. The second piece on route optimization, that is something we don't do yet. It's actually a place where we would like to get to, but today the drivers use Google Maps to navigate. So we don't have real-time information about the traffic and the map. So we actually just have the driver open up Google Maps on their app, and then they use that to navigate. So there may be some opportunities because we don't really understand what specific path the driver would have taken. And given how critical or sensitive people are to food coming cold, we can't risk saying maybe you can stop here and pick it up. In some sense, we are more conservative for customer experience than to optimize for cost.
Hi Vas, this is Nishank at the back. Yeah. So my question is, first of all, great presentation. I have a couple of questions on that. First is, like, I know the peak demand is around 1 p.m. and 9 p.m. and customer wants it in half an hour. So you have to deliver them at the maximum capacity of your delivery guys. So how do you manage the shifts of the delivery guys in a day? And what is the percentage of utilization of a delivery guy?
Oh, I can't give you specifics on the percentage utilization, but what we do with Shift is that there was a brief mention about the demand forecast. What we do is we forecast the demand by slots. So at a zone level, we say we expect to have 2,000 orders in Andheri West. At the breakfast slot, we have 4 slots in the day: breakfast slot, lunch slot, evening snack, and dinner. For each slot, we predict how many orders we expect to receive. Basis that, we then have the team go off and hire a fleet, right? So there is a certain ratio of saying X many orders will require Y drivers basis the efficiency that each driver has, which is also a metric that we track. So that's kind of how we plan for peaks. So we are kind of, I would say we are intentionally planning for a spike in capacity during the 9 p.m. slot because we know that we get more orders. And then we also have that same fleet ramp down during the breakfast slot because there will be less orders. So there is an active management of the fleet basis the demand forecast that we generate. The utilization itself is a number I cannot share.
Okay, and my second question is, the cost of delivery is a major concern in this business. So, for example, if a delivery guy works for 8 hours and like he makes 15 orders, if you consider half hour for one order. So per order, it is costing you around 40 rupees if you consider 600 salary per day. So 40 rupees for an average order of 100 rupees. How are you managing that cost?
The math doesn't, I mean, as you said, the math is not, it's self-explanatory. You cannot, you cannot manage with the cost structure we have today, right? So the focus is not on saying, can we reduce cost of the driver? In fact, we have a competing metric that says, can I increase earnings per week? One of the things which is interesting about Swiggy is there's a certain duality of how we look at metrics. We don't look at metrics in saying this is just cost, can I reduce cost? Because I can reduce cost by even cutting salaries, and that's a good way from a business, but bad way from a driver perspective. So one metric we measure saying is what is the cost of delivery? At the same time, what is the earnings per week that the driver has? So can I increase the driver's earnings to make sure they are feeling a lot more committed to Swiggy? At the same time, can I reduce the cost per unit, which is the cost per delivery? So that kind of balance is what we are striving for. So in that world, the simple thing is, can I make the driver do more with less? Right? That's the simple answer to that, solving that duality. I can't make the driver run faster. I can't keep increasing the driver's salary. I have to figure out, can I batch more, as an example? Can I give the driver more orders in the same run so that they can complete more orders and they can deliver 3 orders with the same cost, which means the cost per order will come down by 3. So batching is a key part of what we are doing. We're also doing things like, where can we reduce waste in the system? For us, waste is basically the time the driver spends doing nothing, which is what we call the wait time. So a lot of our focus is on saying, can I measure wait time and can I reduce wait time? One example of things we did was, we did this thing called just in time, where today when the order comes in, and some of you may have seen it as a customer, in the past it used to be the moment the order came in, we would assign a driver to the order, and the driver goes, runs off, and then is waiting there at the restaurant. And now they are losing money because we are essentially not paying them for tasks they could be working on. So now we have this system called just in time, where using our predictions, we are actually able to say the food will take 20 minutes to prepare, the driver will take 10 minutes to get there. I can wait and not assign this driver until the 10 minutes happens, which means in that same time frame, I can assign them on different things that they can do to earn more in that window. So there are ways in which we want to basically remove waste to increase driver earnings while reducing our cost per delivery.
Thank you.
Cool. Thank you. Thanks, guys.
Thank you so much, audience, for your active participation. On behalf of the SPJMR family, we extend a heartfelt thank you to you, sir, for taking out time to visit our campus and share your views on how Swiggy is excelling in delivering convenience to its customers. It was really fascinating to know what really goes in the background of the app that we use day in and day out. On behalf of SPJMR and PGPM program, I request Prashant Baduria to present sir with a small token of appreciation. Thank you so much, sir, and we look forward to having you in our campus again.